How's it going, everybody? Welcome back. This is the same, or the end of that same presentation I had on Tuesday. Let me expand this here, and then we'll get started. So I just wanted to cover this last one a little bit because I kind of caught myself realizing that I was running out of time. I didn't catch it before. So this is the last thing I'd like you to keep in mind for your notes. This is called Chekhov's gun. You'll probably see this in a lot of the stories we read. It's essentially like a foreshadowing device where we learn about something early on in the story, and then we only understand its importance near the end, or it suddenly becomes important at the climax, or sometime when the hero really needs it. So that's a pretty common aspect, but it came from Anton Chekhov, who basically said if there's a gun hanging on the wall, you have to use it. That was his rule for himself, and what he believed that other writers should do. And so, having that gun in the story tells us something, even if we don't recognize it at the time. Tells us that that's going to come into play later. But a good writer will try to sort of hide that information a little bit, but also make it easy enough for the audience to remember that they saw it in the first place. You don't want to hide it too well, but you also don't want to make it so obvious that it's easy to know that it's going to be used. The reason that this is an important aspect is because when we're trying to write a complicated story, especially if it's one that has a lot of elements or a lot of characters to it, or if it's a longer story, then we have to have plausible explanations for why things happen. So, for example, we don't want to, let's say that the hero needs a very specific potion, right? Or like a chemical, that the hero needs a really specific chemical in order to kill the monster at the end. Well, you could just go through the story and have the hero do whatever they need, and then suddenly they find the potion in their pocket that they need, but of course that seems unrealistic. So Chekhov's gun allows us to have a reason to put that potion in their pocket ahead of time. So we come up with a realistic reason why they have the potion to begin with that doesn't seem related at the time, and then later on at the end, when they most need it, they have the solution, and it doesn't feel like it's forced. So that's an important plot structure. Excuse me. So we went over this Chekhov's gun example. Rick in The Walking Dead pulls a grenade off of a dead zombie and doesn't use it until the end of season 1. Many episodes later, so that's a really good example of Chekhov's gun. A couple other examples are Shaun of the Dead. It's a zombie movie. They go to a bar called the Winchester, and a character says, "Why is it called the Winchester?" And he says it's because of the Winchester rifle that's up above the bar. Okay, well, it is actually Chekhov's gun. It's the one that he said that has to be used. So it makes sense in the story at the time, but they don't need to use the gun. And then of course at the end when the zombies attack, they need it. So it's there for them. And that's a really common plot device, like I've been saying. In Signs, it's a movie about aliens who are sort of allergic to water, and they don't realize that until pretty deep into the movie. So the young girl in that movie continues to talk about how the water tastes funny and all these sorts of things, and keeps giving references to the water. And that's an example of a Chekhov's gun that doesn't have anything to do with the gun at all, which is also pretty common. So this is the assignment for today. I'm going to come back to this assignment in just a minute, so hold on. I want to go over a couple other things, but I promise I'll come back to that. The other thing I want to go over today is the difference between round and flat characters versus dynamic and static. And I'll get back to that assignment in just a second. Actually, you have a two-part assignment. One you're going to post in Microsoft Teams in the chat room with some of the answers that you're going to have here off of this set of slides. And then 2, you're going to post the little short story I want to have you begin to write on OneNote. Okay? Excuse me. So, round versus flat, dynamic and static. How characters' designs create believability and interest for the reader. We want our characters, of course, to be believable and interesting. Let me bring this up just a hair. Okay. So, round characters, to be round means that you are complex. You have lots of different attributes about you. We get to see a lot of different parts of the personality. So a good example of that would be someone like Frodo Baggins from Lord of the Rings. He has a lot of inner turmoil. He has a lot of choices to make. We see him having to deal with conflicts, and sometimes he deals with them very well, and sometimes he doesn't. He's courageous and doubtful. Let me see if I can get rid of my picture here. Nope, that's not the right one. All right, I think my picture's gone, so hopefully we can see that. He's courageous yet doubtful in himself, and that will help us understand more about his character. We get to see a very full character there. So that would be a round character. Another example would be Katniss Everdeen. She has feelings for two different guys. She has lots of conflict, inner conflict about whether she should be fighting and killing people, and then sometimes she doesn't have as much conflict with it because she knows it's for the greater good. All those sorts of things. So she's very complex, and that would be examples of round characters. A flat character is obviously the opposite of that. So it means a character who's only characterized by one or two traits. Good example would be like the evil stepsisters in Cinderella. They're just mean and manipulative. They're always mean. They're always manipulative, and there's no in between. They're just always one trait. Another example would be SpongeBob. Even though he's a main character, he's a flat character. He's all the way happy or all the way sad all of the time. He's completely 100% going with whatever he's going. He's not especially complex. We can sort of know how he's going to react in any given situation. So dynamic versus static. Dynamic characters mean that they have experienced a change at some point in the story, and the more significant the change, the more dynamic they are. Think of all of these versus things. I know it's versus and makes us think of like a black and white issue, but think of these on like a scale. So it's you can be all the way dynamic, or you can be all the way static, or you can be all the way flat, or all the way round. But most characters are going to be somewhere in between. So a fully dynamic character means that they have changed dramatically. A bad guy has turned into a good guy, for example. Darth Vader is the very example that I would pick for a dynamic character, all the way on one side or another. So he turns from light to dark to light again, or I guess he starts light and he turns dark and then he turns light again. He struggles with inner conflict, which we understand only after he makes a decision to change. And so that would be a round character who is also dynamic. So I would call him both of those things. I'll scroll down here a little bit so you can see the meme I've got going on. This is Neville Longbottom. He's a dynamic character as well. So he's from Harry Potter, of course. He's kind of a ditz at the beginning of the story, and then he ends up leading a rebellion. He becomes like the general. So that would be a very significant change. And so I would call him a dynamic character, and also a round character too. Static characters are, of course, the opposite of a dynamic. It means that there have been no changes in the character from start to finish. Cruella de Vil is a good example of this. She's evil all the time. There's no attempt to change herself. She doesn't want to change herself. She thinks she's got it all figured out. And so that would be a static character. That being said, like, she might still kind of be a round character. You can be round and static, or you can be dynamic and flat. So that those two things don't automatically match up. All right, so your turn. We have the Joker. This is the Dark Knight Joker. So we'll use that. Whoops, let me go back. So this is what I'm going to have you do. Let me pop this back on. This is what I'm going to have you do for assignment number 1 of this. So number 1, you have to answer this. Is the Joker from the Dark Knight series dynamic or static? If you don't know them, you probably can look up a few clips to find some of these characters. Yeah, dynamic or static. So does he change, or does he stay the same pretty much the whole thing? And you can just do a quick answer in the Microsoft Teams section. I'll put a prompt in there so you know what to do, but for the specific day. All right, this is Dorothy from Wizard of Oz. Is she round or flat? Post what you think. Is she complex, or is she characterized by just one trait? And then is she dynamic or static? Does she change over the course of the story, or does she stay the same? Okay, so let's go back over to, so consider both of those, Joker and Dorothy. No, two wildly different characters. Sorry, I'm trying to find my thing here. There we go. Okay, let me hide this screen again. Hopefully that works. Okay, so for today, you're going to post this in OneNote in addition to commenting about the two characters I just showed you. Write the beginning of a short story, meaning don't try to tell me the whole story in just one page using the proper low. So I only want you to write a page. I don't care if it feels like it just falls off the face of the earth. You don't have to try to explain everything. Just pretend like you're writing a full story that you only gave me the first page for, okay? I want you to create the scene using in medias res, okay? So I want you to be like immediately in the action and try to experiment with creating exposition, meaning telling me a little bit about things I need to know about the character as you go and in the middle of the action that she's dealing with, okay? So your prompt is that your main character is named Amy. Write the beginning of the story where Amy decides to take a shortcut behind a bank on her daily walk when bank robbers run out of the back door of the bank. So she immediately is in the middle of witnessing this bank robbery. Tell me like the beginning of that story, what's going to happen. You know, you probably won't have an answer to that question, but you know, get kind of the conflict set up and put us right into the middle of the action. And at the same time, attempt to explain a little bit about Amy while it's relevant. Okay, you may not be able to explain everything about Amy in a single page, but you know, try to create a full character as best you can. You probably also won't have like a dynamic character. Amy's probably going to be pretty static in this first page because we don't know much about her. She's going to be characterized by very few things. Likewise, you know, she's probably not going to be super round at the moment. She's going to be pretty flat because again, we don't have time to worry about all the complexities of her life just yet because she's in the middle of this bank robbery situation. So be thinking about that. It is a little challenging, but give it a try. I would suggest writing this in something like Microsoft Word and then doing a printout into OneNote. But roughly, you're looking at around 250 to 300 words for the start of this story. Okay, and if you like it, then you can eventually use this for later on when we start writing full stories. So yeah. So look forward to reading what you get and make sure that you do both ends of the both ends of the assignment, one in Microsoft Teams and one in OneNote. Take care.